Welcome everyone to this channel, and thank you for joining us for a short video series that I'm creating for this financial year. So joining me today, I have a featured guest who has, come to share his perspective as a leader. So thank you, Gaurav, for joining me today. Maybe a quick introduction of yourself and what do you do?
So a quick introduction about myself. I'm Gaurav. My current role is to be a general manager at Comquest Sdn Bhd. We are a company based out of Brunei. We are focusing on digital transformation for our customers in Brunei. We are about a 230 people strong company. So my role in the current capacity is to look after the well-being of the people, right? To make sure the team are delivering in the right way for our customers, and also to sort of have a crystal gaze into the future of what the technologies are, how the technologies are evolving, right? Because the present is always handled by the teams, and they are pretty good at it. But where people like me, we think our role is to look at the future technologies, right? So that's pretty much in the nutshell what I do.
As a leader in your organization, especially during this pandemic period, how have you leveraged cloud technologies to keep your company relevant in today's sector of businesses?
Right. Yeah. So cloud adoption has actually, I mean, if I can sort of narrate this with a bit of a storyline, right? If you see, all of us in the industry, and whether in the ICT or in the other industries, have been speaking about cloud for a while. It's not as if it has just come during the pandemic, right? It has been around for 5, 8, 10 years, more than a decade now. But the conversations that were happening, let's say pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, are very different now, right? So the pre-pandemic scenario, if you look at, it's sometimes very difficult to imagine the world pre-pandemic. It has been so long. But if you see in the pre-pandemic scenario, there would be few use cases where customers will talk about, going cloud. One clearly was that it was the technology for the future. So, as Balaji Srinivasan would say, it was more of a virtue signaling than the value signaling, right? So everybody wanted to do that virtue signaling of talking about cloud. So people will, speak about cloud, but not much was coming out of it in a substantial manner. There was still a growth, but not to such an extent. The second reason that a lot of customers were going to cloud, in my opinion, is that, in a business nature where you had a very clear tie-up between the revenue and the cost per customer, right? It was very easy to justify moving to cloud, because you incur a cost of moving to cloud only when you acquire a customer, right, which is associated with the revenue. Whereas people who have this infrastructure cost as a fixed cost were not necessarily moving to cloud, right? Because they said, I have to incur setting up a data center as a capex cost. And it is a one-time cost which I will depreciate over the period of next 3 to 5 years. It was important for customers to look at, whether from a cost perspective it makes sense or not. And a lot of them were deciding against it, right? So I think that became a pretty strong theme pre-pandemic. Now, post-pandemic is a very different scenario. Suddenly, all of us got a shock that, we may not even have an office to go to, right? We will have to, for as long as we know, we have to work from a remote scenario. So if you have to work from a remote scenario, especially being an ICT company, you want to have your secure network, you want to have the security around your applications, anything that you're doing. So security, accessibility became the more important word, right? As opposed to looking at purely numbers from a cost and revenue perspective, right? So what I'm trying to sort of get at is that, the pre-pandemic phase was more driven by virtue signaling and purely cost factors, whereas post-pandemic it has become a necessity, right? That you need to have cloud as part of your strategy, because pandemic has given you no choice, right? We pretty much have no choice not to have a cloud strategy, right? The second point that I would highlight on this is that there has been a sort of a very liberating feeling that has come into the customers now, because now we know that, and this time I'm speaking from my own experience here. What we have done here is, earlier it was, a very binary debate of either you go completely cloud, or you have your complete, in-house data center, which is being managed by an army of engineers. Now we know that there could be a very good hybrid setup, right? Where you could still have some of your critical applications in-house, right, in your data center being managed by a small team. But the remaining applications, which could still be business critical, but are much more open for, cloud technologies, could be moved to cloud, right? Now, this liberation that has come into the, I would say, the networking talks or the Zoom talks has actually opened up eyes for a lot of CIOs, right? Even in Brunei, I see customers, including many from the government sector, are much more open to talking about cloud.
So my second question to you is, what are the technology transformations that you are looking at in the near future that you wish to explore?
As you know, I mean, again, pandemic has accelerated the already accelerated pace of technology transformation, right? So, as we say by Moore's law, technology is sort of expanding itself at an exponential rate, right? Which is sometimes very difficult for us to understand, because we live our life in a linear form, right? So I'm pretty, I would say, personally very inspired by work done by people like Peter Diamandis, Ray Kurzweil, right, Salim Ismail, right, who look at next 10, 15 years, kind of a model. They look at 10, 15 years, what are the technologies and the impact of those today. So the interesting phenomena that I'm picking up, and I'm sure it's pretty visible to everybody, is that the convergence of technology is creating a hyper acceleration, right, of growth. So just to give you a fact, though it was a pandemic year, 2020 still saw the highest amount of capital inflow into startups, right, globally. So the amount of money that the venture capitalists funded, right, for the startups is highest in 2020. So which means, despite pandemic, people are, and most of that, as is pretty obvious, most of that capital has gone into technology startups, right? Which basically technology or medical sciences startup, which are kind of converging also, right? So the pattern is that a lot of these industry segments, which were kind of considered as different domains, are coming together, right? So the technology with respect to sensors and IoTs, and combined with the cloud technologies, is now suddenly converging itself to health sciences, right? And then boom, you have things like Lumen, and you have levels coming up with continuous glucose monitor, right? Which was unheard of. So now the possibilities that this particular convergence opens up is just humongous, because we saw what happened to, let's say cryptocurrency, right? So it is still not a widely accepted currency, but still, right, these were two different industries. So you had currency on one side, traditional currency, and then you had cryptography, which has been known to mankind for thousands of years. And boom, these two things come together and you have cryptocurrency, right? I see this happening across multiple industries, right? So whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, transportation, right? Transportation is again a phenomenal transformation that is happening, right? People are not even calling it flying cars or anything, right? There is a very nice term that I heard about airline or air mobility, right? Which means you have these taxis which will just take off from the building, and they are already in commercial usage, right? Or will be there soon. So the transformation that is happening there, the transformation that is happening in education sector, right, where the technologies on AR, VR, right, is just going to completely transform the education sector, right? Imagine a kid sitting in Southeast Asia is able to attend Harvard University very easily, right, without having the need to fly all the way and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Now, some of those is possible because of these technologies and the computational power that today the cloud service providers are able to provide.
Thank you, Gaurav, for sharing those insights. And I echo you. Digital transformation has accelerated so much that people are able to travel around the world digitally,
Yep.
virtually, attend conferences, which is far away from the comfort of their homes. And the modern workforce today has to be digital. whether it'll be
Yep.
devices with cloud productivity, with serverless computing and whatnot. It has to go digital. Otherwise, businesses will be left in the game. So thank you, Gaurav, for those insights and responses pertaining to technology and how you foresee the transformations will be, not only in Brunei, but also globally in the world. And I've seen your profile on LinkedIn. You have had many
Mhm.
uh, sharing of inspirational quotes. Maybe you want to give our audience, one that would be relevant for what's happening in the world today. Up to you, Gaurav.
Right. Right. Sure. So yeah, I write those posts out of my interest, of journaling, and sometimes I get inspired by some people that I'm reading or the book that I'm reading, and a sort of a provoking thought comes in, and I like to journal it and then hopefully post it out there for the people. So, if I have to narrow down to one quote, I would probably pick something that I had, I think, heard from Naval Ravikant, where he says that what we need in life is impatience with action and patience with results. Right? It is very, very crucial, because sometimes again and again it sort of ties back into the exponential kind of mindset, right? The 6 Ds of technology disruption that Peter Diamandis talks about, right? Where a lot of these transformations are sometimes very deceptive in nature, right? Initially you do not see, right? And the same thing happens if you see in the banking sector with respect to our compounding of interest, right? Initially you do not see the effects of compounding, and as you wait, suddenly you see, boom, the impacts of compounding. And a sort of a negative correlation to that is also what we saw in COVID-19, right? The number of cases in many countries will start off small, and people will think, okay, 10, 50, 100, and suddenly you will start getting into thousands, right? So that's how the exponential growth and the compounding works. So his quote on, saying that impatience with action, which means every time you decide to take an action, be impatient with it, right? But when it comes to results, that's where your patience comes in, right? Not the other way around. A lot of people get it the other way around. So I found this quote very, very inspiring, and that's what I would want to share with the people listening to this. Thank you.